Most of us by now have heard the news. Bee populations are in decline. But what does this mean? For honeybees, this means almost 1/3 of hives do not make it through the winter. As for native bees, we don't have as much information on their populations. But recently, 7 species of yellow-faced bee in Hawaii and 1 species of bumblebee in the continental US were added to the endangered species list. And this bumblebee species, Bombus affinis, or the rusty patch bumblebee, has actually experienced a 96% decline in its population. All of this is particularly troubling since bees are directly responsible for 1/3 of all of the food that we eat. Many are starting to take actions, from homeowners to hobbyist beekeepers all the way up to state initiatives. One of these initiatives, called Protecting NC Pollinators, has recently been implemented by the NCDA. As part of this initiative, 18 experimental research stations across the state have planted pollinator plots, which are wildflower plots planted specifically to help pollinators. I am spearheading a new study measuring the effects of the planting of these pollinator plots on pollinators. Throughout the sampling season, I, along with a small team from our lab, visit each station and collect samples from the pollinator plots. Then each sample is identified in the lab under the microscope down to genus and species. Currently, after just the first year of sampling, we have 4,281 samples that cover 22 different genera of bee. This year is to serve as the baseline for the next 2 years of sampling in order to monitor how the bee populations change from the planting of these pollinator plots. With such a large data set, there are many possibilities for data analysis. For example, we can look at how plot size affects abundance and diversity of native bees. We can look at how the presence or absence of honeybees affects the abundance and diversity of native bees. We can look at differences of populations over time and geographic area. And we can also get more specific and look at the population dynamics within a particular genus. As an example, bumblebees. There are 17 species of bumblebees that can be found in North Carolina. This sampling season, we found 10 different species. We can look at the bumblebee diversity within each station and monitor how this changes temporally and spatially. Future plans for this project include continued identification of the current samples collected this summer and samples collected over the next 2 years. We will also begin some laboratory analysis on the bee populations. In addition, I want to measure the oxidative stress in the bees. Oxidative stress is something that occurs in all living organisms. Whenever there is a stressor, for example, if a bee has to fly a far distance to find food, or a bee does not have enough food, free radicals will build up in the cells. These radicals will then attack cells and damage the cells and DNA. This can negatively impact the health of the bee and cause early aging. The logical conclusion would be that as the pollinator plots become more established and provide more resources for the food, the oxidative stress in the bees will decrease. So oxidative stress can be used as a measure to monitor the impacts that these pollinator plots are having on bee populations. Bees are an important part of the ecosystem. Without them, the floral and agricultural landscapes would look very different. There are a few things you can do at home to help the bee populations. For example, you can plant flowers wherever possible. Bees need a broad range and a very diverse floral diet. Some flowers provide very nutritious pollen, while others are better at providing nectar. So it's good to provide bees with a range of flowers to choose from. Also, it's best to leave things alone during the winter. Many bee species burrow into the ground, and a lot of them hibernate. For example, bumblebee queens will hibernate in shallow topsoil or piles of leaves if they're left there for a long time. So it's best not to disturb these areas in the winter, because if you do, you could stop an entire colony from happening in the spring. You can also start making bee hotels. One example of this is bamboo sticks, and you can drill into them and bundle them up and put them in a tree branch, and native bees will use them to lay their eggs in. And in the spring you can look in and see little bee faces. My hope is that this study can help to fill the gap on the information of native bee populations, and as trends in the data begin to develop, I hope that this can inspire and direct others to take steps towards protecting pollinators. Because what would we do without cute little faces like this?